Hello, you're watching a special transmission on the Black Day for Kashmir, being observed all over Pakistan and by everybody in Pakistan and around the globe, because it was on the 27th of October 1947 when Indian military troops landed at Srinagar airport. And since then, 27th of October is considered to be the darkest day in the history for Kashmiris. After this day on the 27th of October, the Kashmiri people for the last 72 years have been subject to the worst kind of brutality and inhumane treatment at the hands of the largest militarized zone in the world and the largest military occupying an area of approximately 900,000 troops occupying one single area at the moment. And the Kashmiri people since that day have had to face immense brutality at the hands of this Indian military. The people of Pakistan feel that it is a moral obligation to support the people of Kashmir as they are our friends, our colleagues and our neighbors. And we are also very concerned about their conditions in Kashmir right now due to the fact that this is a disputed region and also because the state of the Kashmiri people and the humanitarian crisis that is there right now is of grave concern to Pakistan, and it must be for the entire world. Now, as of 1947, 27th October, and the subsequent years that followed, and starting from 1989 when the freedom struggle began in Kashmir, the indigenous freedom struggle, approximately 95,000 people have been martyred in Indian occupied Kashmir. 22,000 women have been widowed, 107,000 orphans are now there, were not there because of this, and approximately 11,000 women were raped. And this is prior to August 5th when the Indian government decided to revoke Article 370 and 35A, and since then a lot worse has been happening. So we are going to be talking about this with our guests today in the studios. We have with us Rana Athar Javed, who's a senior analyst, and we have with us Brigadier Shahid Jagir, who's also a senior analyst, and we have with us Dr. Musarrat Amin, who's an international relations expert. Thank you so much all of you for being with us today. Sir, Rana Sahab, I'll begin with you. I want to just speak about this particular day, the 27th of October, and the significance that it holds for the Kashmiri people. This is the day when, after the ruler of Indian occupied Kashmir signed the so-called instrument of accession to India, which there's no proof of. It's never been produced, it's never been shown to anybody. We don't even know if it's there. The following day, Indian troops occupied Srinagar, and then this worst disaster and this worst humanitarian crisis that the world has pretty much ever seen, because it's just carrying on for so many decades, started. So would you like to comment on this day?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, obviously it is for, as you mentioned in your intro, the darkest day in the history of humankind and also the Kashmiri people and the history of the subcontinent. The way India illegally annexed Kashmir on 27th October 1947. Why I said illegally annexed, because you mentioned about the forged so-called signing of letter of accession. That very day when they claim there has been written extensively, also mentioned by the British diplomats who were in contact with Mr. Hannan,
right,
who was supposed to be, who was claiming that he was there, but there was no flight took place because of the weather on that day. So he was basically, this was confirmed by the British diplomat at that time. So first of all, this is really as India fabricated and forged that signing. And at the top of it, sending military means when it was decided on principles that this part will be, because of the majority of the Muslims, be part of Pakistan and the other areas will be going to India. So this shows that how it started basically. And the journey of 72 years of sufferings of Kashmiris and the brutality of Indian military it has been continued since
right,
then.
exactly.
And this brings us to an important question to us, that why there has been a complete silence on the part of international community.
Absolutely.
This would be a question which we hope we will discuss it.
Absolutely, we will do that. Brigadier Shahid Jagir, now the 87% Muslim population in the state of Jammu and Kashmir did not want to exceed, they did not want to join India, they wanted to be part of Pakistan. And after that, it was India who called the UN Security Council session in order to bring a solution to this problem. And that is when they agreed to hold the plebiscite in Kashmir. And then they went back on their agreements and they went back on their commitments, right?
Thank you very much. Now, I'll take you a bit in the history. Now, Kashmir, in 1339, Shah Mir became the first Muslim ruler of Kashmir. And for next 5 centuries, the Kashmir had been under the Muslim rules, may it be Mughal, Durranis, others. Now, after the first Anglo-British, Anglo-Sikh war, which Ranjit Singh won, they signed a Treaty of Amritsar, in which the Jammu and Kashmir was, literally sold to Gulab Singh for 2,500,000.
Okay.
Now, one thing which the Gulab Singh did as a loyal Kashmiri was that he even did not allow the Britishers to buy the land in the Kashmir. He said that it is only the Kashmiris who have the right on the land of the Kashmir.
Okay.
Then Hari Singh, who was the grandson of Gulab Singh, he so-called, as Dr. Rana Sahab has said, that that accession agreement which was signed. But one thing is very important in this. The history says that Lord Mountbatten, on receiving the letter from the Hari Singh, he agreed to the accession, but he also said that, I quote, that it is my government's government wish that as soon as the law and order has been restored in Jammu and Kashmir and her soil cleared of the issues, the state's accession should be settled by the reference to the people.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Then, as you have said, that it was India which took the issue of Kashmir to the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, interestingly, the Sheikh Abdullah, who signed the accession agreement with the government of India in after 1947, he also signed it conditionally with the Indians.
Okay.
And also, the Prime Minister reportedly have himself urged United Nations to organize a poll in the Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
Now, seeing these historical facts, India has gone steadily what all it has committed to at the international level and as well as bilaterally.
So they've gone backwards consistently
They
on their
backtracked
commitments.
actually.
Yeah.
What he meant, but because I was saying that is backtracked
Yeah.
since 1947. Every agreement they
Yeah.
agreed, right?
And every
Exactly.
commitment to the United Nations, to the Kashmiris,
And it was
especially.
India which internationalized this issue.
Yes.
And now they are saying that it's a bilateral issue.
It's a bilateral or internal issue,
Or
which is
internal
the line
issue.
they've been taking over the last few years. Now, Dr. Musayat, I'm going to come to you now. Okay, so the Kashmiris were not given this right that they had through the UN Security Council resolutions and also the promises that they were made by the Indian leadership. So they were not given this right and they asked for it, they didn't get it. So in 1989, their freedom struggle began. And after that happened, this is when they felt disappointed that the matter was unresolved through peaceful means and through political means. And then they responded and they started to take up arms, and this is when the military started responding with brute force, and this is when you started seeing the human rights violations start, and which have not ended to this day. There's been constant surges of these kind of freedom struggles and then the backlash from the army. So do you want to just explain to us what happened at that time?
Thank you, Sharmeen. First of all, when my respected colleagues, they were explaining the history, so I got a few points from that history that we can see and we can peep into the history that unfair and unjustifiable, and they did not given to the rights, their right of to get the freedom, because when partition was occurring, and then Raja Hari Singh, and then when he talked about Sheikh Abdullah, and it was also, the letter was conditional. So we can see from history that everything was controversial. So that was not settled, that was disputed territory. And whenever the letter or anything in written was given to Indian government, that was conditional, that condition was that the dispute would be solved according to the will of the Kashmiri people. So they did not listen it. Even they took it to the United Nations, they themselves took it to United Nations in 1948. And when if we talk about the first war between India and Pakistan happened in 1948, Pakistan was not a stable state at that time because of unfair distribution of assets, and then mass migration which was happening in this subcontinent, and how brutality was happening. That was the huge migration happened in the history of even in the world between both India and Pakistan. So Pakistan was not stable. Pakistan was not at that point that it could resolve, or it could take to that level that it could be resolved that issue. And when you were talking, if we come to 1989, that the struggle was started when Kashmiris they saw that they were not given their due rights, which were given to other states on the basis of population or the Muslim majority. They could be the part of Pakistan or the India or whatever. So they started their freedom struggle, and that was indigenous struggle. And they basically raising their voice, they wanted to listen this voice to the world, that they should listen and they should be given their due right, their freedom, that they could be the part of Pakistan, or even if they want to be independent. So that was basically their basic right, which was not given. And now we can see that what is happening, and even we have 3 wars with India on this specific issue. And if it is not being solved, we can see the future that because now both the states, they are nuclear weapon states, what would happen, and brutality is happening in the Kashmir. Human rights violations are happening in Kashmir, and you see that rapes, and they have the boys, 13,000 boys, they have been taken away from their homes, and there is no clue where they are right now. And when they come back, that what kind of mental condition they would be having, and what kind of thinking or thoughts they would be having at that when they will come back. So the situation is going to be very grave. We are talking about that might be they would be given their right, and the world could be listening to them, they would be listening their voices, they might be given their rights. But up till now it's been, I guess, 3 months. That after the 5 August, I guess it's 3 months.
84 days.
84th day. I guess today. So still we are not seeing that strong voice from the world, just feeble, fragile voices from all over the world we are seeing. So the situation is going to be very
And
great.
let's be reminded, this is happening for decades now.
Absolutely.
This is the worst it's been probably, but at the same time now we started, 1989 they started their freedom struggle. Again 2008 there were protests. Hundreds of people have been arrested, and there are so many youths that are still unaccounted for, and they say that many of them might be in unmarked graves at this moment. As of now, when we talk about the detained leaders over there, some of the Hurriyat leaders, the freedom struggle leaders and all, for example Yasin Malik, if you look at their interviews, they say that we started off peacefully, and then we took up arms, and then after that he was convinced to put his, to go back to a peaceful struggle, so he agreed. And he said that the Indian government does not give room for peaceful struggle. Even if you're peacefully protesting, they will put you away, they'll lock you up, and they'll torture you. And then this gentleman has also been through years of torture, years and years of torture, and so have the other political prisoners. So sir, now 2008 and onwards, what's been going on? It's had its ebbs and flows, it's gone up and down. So what are your comments on that?
I think first of all, as we were discussing from the first point of this illegal annexation and the history of the 27th, this Black Day, which is today. This has a reflection of, if we look into the pattern, a systematic violation of international law. This has to be determined. that a state which is a member of the United Nations, claims to be the biggest democracy,
Yeah.
has been violating international law, and the law which was crafted by the British government, by the British at that time, violated all those two laws. The decision of the British and agreements, mutual agreements, then international law. And this is, we have to determine that India is in violation of international law and never granted right to self-determination to Kashmiris, despite of the fact, as we all are saying, agreed at the United Nations. So this is one area which we should look for, why India is so belligerent, because India has or has had decisions from the start that they will not surrender to international law. Now about this leadership and the, you know, if we look into chronologically how the movement started, obviously it's the suppression,
Yeah.
it's the intense, as you said, the most heavy militarized zone in the world, 900,000 and close to that, heavily armed people. So
With unarmed civilians.
unarmed civilian to the to watch them every now and then don't let them really freedom of movement in that way. This indicates also that indigenous struggle started because India was in violation of international law, and the people of Kashmir are aware of that. Now that you are saying the leadership from Yasin Malik, you know, Sayyid Ali Gilani, and all other leaders, Mir Umar Wais Farooq and his father, all these leaders, especially this aging leader, and of course Yasin Malik suffered, I would say, the worst torture, but at the same time Sayyid Ali Gilani suffered at this age a longest house arrest, and then all kind of subjected to all kind of torture, mental and trauma to his leadership. And the other issue which came, that they staged a very new phenomenon, as we all know, to try to change the demographic of Kashmir. All this is part that when they jailed and tortured the leadership, the first and second tier, who will represent Kashmiri people?
Absolutely.
That was the a point which was constructed by Indians, and this is what we call it, the Double Doctrine, and we also these days calling MAD actually now, Modi, Amit and Double, because they have from since this government has came, BJP and Hindutva government has come into power, they have designed this all in order to expedite what they decided in 1947. And that illegal annexation indicates as well that they basically first killed almost 100,000 people. You indicated unmarked mass graves. Amnesty International, UN Human Rights Report came out in 2 years ago. Report from the British Parliament exactly on this matter. Report on the European Commission, and very recently US Congress House committees, even Alice, this Secretary of State
Alice Wells.
Alice Wells, and then the chairman of the House Arms Committee also indicated and said that this appears to be their concern, the gravest concern is about the human rights. But if we look into the interplay of this all brutality, they have decided now, as we fast forward on this one, from 2000 onward, they are on the different trajectory. They want to neutralize and eliminate maximum all minorities.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they've started with Kashmir, went back in Assam, and then started with Kashmir, went back into other states in order to assert the Hindutva government.
Exactly. So now going back to now the Kashmir struggle, which we were talking about, 2016, now the young popular youth leader Burhan Muzaffar Wani, he was a very popular leader he was detained by Kashmiri troops, and then his brother was killed as well. So again, a homegrown freedom fighter who was very despondent about the treatment of the Indian military with the citizens, he was brutally killed. He was murdered by the Indian army, and then more uprisings took place, and that's when pellet guns started being used on the public and on the protesters and all. And the pellet gun whole campaign that was used by the Indian military left hundreds and thousands of children either blinded by one eye or just completely blinded altogether. Children and of course adults and everybody, but the biggest concern obviously is what the children over there are going through. So sir, this now particular case of when Burhan Wani was killed, that caused a huge uprising, and since then, I mean, this has been the worst thing that's happened. So would you like your comments on that, please?
I will start my comments with the writing in the book of Nelson Mandela, in which he says that when a law-abiding person is denied the right to live according to his wishes and the human liberty, he becomes an outlaw. Now, that is what exactly is happening in Kashmir.
Yeah.
You know, so many killings as you have mentioned, you know, 12 to 13 soldiers per square kilometer of the area, you know, about 3 months of crackdown. Now, women are being raped in front of, you know, in front of their children. Do you think humanly it is possible for a person to, you know, digest all and still, you know, abide by the law?
Yeah.
It is not possible.
Yeah, this is something that Mr. Yasin Malik said in one of his interviews. He said that don't push the Kashmiri people against the wall, because then there's going to be a
that is what it is.
That's what they're doing. They're pushing them against the wall.
What I mean to say is that there is a limit to torture a person physically and mentally. You know, beyond that, he becomes an outlaw.
Yeah.
But that is what has happened with the Burhan Wani when he was, you know, dragged behind a military jeep in the streets of, you know, Kashmir. He was, you know, forced to rub his nose on the street. But that is when he decided. His father, you listen to his father's interview, he said he was a very liberal boy.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what is happening. That when you there are 2,700 mass graves in India, which has been claimed by the Indians, one of their own NGO. You know, now, how it is possible that under this circumstances the people should abide by the law? And the agony is that India is always trying to refer this indigenous freedom struggle as a terrorism sponsored by Pakistan, because terrorism is a very, you know, common, you know, coined term nowadays. But one has to go to the root cause of that.
Yeah.
Now, another thing which is
and of course it is not. Of course, it's not. It's a pure freedom struggle.
It's pure freedom struggle.
It's freedom struggle under the United Nations rules.
And the United Nations recognize this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
United Nations, in its books, it recognizes this thing, that freedom struggle is absolutely, you know, allowed. Indian, as Rana Saab has said, that India has, you know, violated the international. I go a little step ahead of that. India is denying its own constitution also. It provides security to the freedom of speech, to the religions, to all the minority which are over there.
Yeah.
Now this is, look what is happening
And
in
that's
Kashmir.
not being provided. Exactly.
All social media is closed.
Yeah.
Internet is closed. There is no voice from outside. The UN observers are not allowed to go and monitor. The international media is not allowed to go and monitor. The Mahmouda Mufti's daughter is not allowed to go. She had to ask for a permission from the Indian Supreme Court to go over there.
Yeah.
With all this, I'm sorry to say the international community is still quiet.
Yeah,
They were
exactly.
just, paying a lip service for the Kashmir.
Yeah, and they need to get
They
more
need to
active
do
about
something about it.
So now, as of August 5th this year, now we've had the Indian government decide to revoke Article 370 and 35A, and as Sir was saying earlier, that this is to change the demography of the region. It's to make to allow other people to come and settle in who are non-Muslims. Although this is a Muslim area, and the Kashmiris were previously allowed to be the only ones buying land over there and property. So, and now the special status is also gone, and the political leaders over there have all been round up and they've been put into detention. Now there's a political vacuum over there. So Dr. Masad, what do you see cropping up in the absence of any political leaders in that region?
Yeah, actually, they did not release the first year leadership of Kashmir, that the political leadership. If they could have released them, that we can see the response of that leadership, and we know that because the pro-Indian leadership was also there, and then we come out of this prison or this lockdown, then we will see, because they are not releasing them. They know that if they will come out, they are against them now, because we have seen the statements of their kids, even if we talk about Mehbooba Mufti.
Yeah.
This is why they are not releasing them, because they know that they can mobilize all the masses in Kashmiri, and they know that they played a trick with the Kashmiri people. And when we talking about that the freedom struggle, it was, if you allow me that I can go this just a little bit back, that 1989 when this freedom struggle was started, because before the day first the Kashmiri people, all the people living in Kashmir, they were in confusion, because they were expecting, as the partition was occurring and then the majority Muslim states, they would go towards Pakistan, and the other the partition rules, that how they were dividing all the territory in subcontinent, and they were expecting that they might be getting annexation with Pakistan, but it did not happen. It did not happen. And then, they were, since the day first they were confused, and when they realized, and they started their freedom struggle, and India, since the day first, they are blaming Pakistan, that Pakistan politically, morally and diplomatically, Pakistan had been supporting Kashmir. And when they revoked this Article 370 and 35A, that was basically the day that Pakistan government took decision that how they have to go, because they opened the eyes of the leaders of not only the Kashmiri political leadership who were pro-Indian, and then even the Pakistani, because I will just say that a little bit on our part, that was a faulty kind of things that we had been playing. We did not pay much heed to this issue, that we did not internationalize this issue, because even the resolution was there in the United Nations. But after the 5 August this year, since they revoked this article, now the government is very active diplomatically. You see that within these 3 months, that now we are seeing the support of the people, even from the European Union Commission on Human Rights, Amnesty International, they are speaking on these issues. Even United Nations Secretary General, he was, because these are the non-political organizations and the people, he is the huge diplomat, the Secretary General of United Nations. They are speaking in favor of the Kashmiri, and they are pressurizing India, basically they should come on the negotiating table and negotiate on this. And now we are waiting that when they will ask them that they should release the leadership, Kashmiri leadership, because this is the very important, most important part of this dispute or issue, that they have to come and they have to play there. Without them, we cannot take any decision, because they had been struggling since long, and they know the will of the Kashmiri people, what do they want, and then how they have to negotiate, basically. So we are waiting that how international voices, they can, how much they can push India, or they can pressurize India that they should release the leadership, political leadership of Kashmir, and then they come on the negotiating table, that we can go
and find
somewhere
else.
Yes, we can get some solution
has to come out
absolutely
at some point. It
but
can't go on
without the Kashmiri people's will, we cannot reach on any solution.
Absolutely.
So for that leadership leadership of Kashmiri leadership that should be
That needs
released.
to be
Absolutely.
released. Absolutely. So, sir, since August 5th now, since that fateful day after that, like Dr. Musarrat has been saying, Pakistani Prime Minister, Foreign Office, everybody's been very active, the diaspora communities, to make the voice of the Kashmiri people heard. Now, the situation right now, as it is in the valley, now the Indian government is trying to show that some semblance of normalcy is returning, whereas the reports that you're hearing, it's still a very, very grim situation over there. You have lack of access to medical supplies. You have people dying in hospitals because the medicines are not available. A lady whose son had a snake bite couldn't get the anti-venom on time, and I think she had about 22 hours, and she ran from one hospital to the other, and they were not able to coordinate getting to the place that had the anti-venom because they did not have cell phones. And doctors are not able to coordinate with each other if somebody needs specialist care. So this kind of situation for the patients there and the people there, this is also a very big emergency situation, would you say?
Well, I would say actually just one small point on, you said the Burhan Wani, actually he was termed as a poster boy of Kashmir, who was a young man. I think because of him all the movement was revived and reignited, and this is the second, third generation of Kashmiris. So this is important point, that most of the youth involved are professionals, well educated, doctors, lawyers, all are supporting to maintain their Kashmiri culture, civilization, their identity, special status, and the right to self-determination. This is a very important point for us to understand. The Kashmiris always have taken in their hand this struggle. So they understand that internationally they lack support, but they're still there on the ground.
Right, and it's been happening for generations.
Yes, for generation. And the point you have mentioned, actually, it has a most important factor in it, that the UNGA's Prime Minister's address actually was basically the linchpin in all whatever happened afterwards. Prior to that, international media, I mean, people used to get really struggle to publish a factual article on Kashmir. And now the international media, all big newspaper, you name them, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all of them, and continuous interviews and editorials in international media, New York Times. Nobody is saying to them, but they understood that the termination and abrogation of 370, 35A on 5th of August basically is, I would say, from Indian side, they have initiated a war against their own people. They have been doing it. But this is basically, I would say, completely breakdown of all kind of laws. And that's why I said that if you compare 27th October, because we are back to that status now. In 1947, what was the status then of Kashmir? That it was after almost a year, it was supposed to have a plebiscite on right to self-determination by Kashmiri people. I think if we look at the current situation, it is Modi's government which has initiated, we call it strategic blunder, but I would also call it, maybe at the moment is looking at very, very pessimistic because of the state of people of Kashmir. But I would say it's also blessing in disguise that this has been internationalized by the help of the Pakistani government, our diplomats, international diaspora, and also international security experts. They are questioning that if it was that India which West has romanticizing with for the past 3 decades, what will happen to this, all this, their technological advancement if they are not adhering to international law and law of their own land? And why they're treating their own people like this? This is the question mark. And the other important thing is the economy. Indian economy is dented because of the Modi's policies of this Hindutva policies. People are afraid to invest in India because they are brutally, killing also Christians. They have stopped Christian missionaries and all those who are otherwise can go to any Muslim country. And the point here is that Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, was a major contributor to Indian economy. And this has lost. And I have heard countless arguments from Indian army chief, for example, really sort of ridiculing its own professional army.
Yeah.
That an army chief was going ahead, taking political stances, attacking Pakistan. This showed that they are really confused and they have lost their directions.
Exactly.
Because
and then,
as a regional power,
and then they haven't been able to
I
follow
have never
up on
called
the
India
claims.
as a world power. I call it as a regional power, which really stresses upon imposing its hegemonic designs in contrast to Chinese. This would not happen. The Black Day represents Kashmiris, all those hopes. It is not the other way around. We are sad. We are really very saddened with the fact our brother, sister in occupied Kashmir has been imprisoned in a Auschwitz, in a concentration camp.
Absolutely.
From the
But
Nazi style.
If you allow me, Rana Sahib,
Please.
recently,
Please go ahead.
you know, the setback for Indian foreign policy actually, and a success for Pakistan foreign policy is that the quadrilateral, the peace agreement was, you know, it is going on between Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China. It happened in Moscow, you know, and they did not invite India. So it was a major success for Pakistan's foreign policy recently.
Yeah.
So they did not invite India. So it is, you know, and you understand that India and Russia, they have very good friendship since long, and they had been enjoying very good relations, but
Yeah.
they did not invite them.
Yeah,
So
this
this is a
was-
setback
yeah.
for their policy. It means that world is understanding that how
Yeah.
India is behaving, and brutality they are you know exercising in Kashmir. So they are realizing, and if their economy is going down, and the agreement they were about to sign with Malaysia, they withdrew themselves and they are not going to sign again.
And of course, Mahathir Mohamad-
absolutely, yeah,
Mahathir
and
Mohamad
he's
took a
supporting
stance
Pakistan.
Yeah,
that
and
he
he's
will not
revised.
And
compromise on the
yes,
principles.
absolutely. So it means that word they have listened within
Right.
these 3 months. You know, how success we got on diplomatic level,
Yeah.
and then you see how our foreign policy is going on. So I guess
Absolutely.
that sooner or later we are going to see some concrete steps.
positive,
that will,
Hopefully,
yes,
yes.
we
positive
hope.
steps
Right.
towards
So,
Kashmir
Brigadier Sahib,
people.
I'd like to ask you now, we've seen General Bipin Rawat's comments about how Gilgit-Baltistan in Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir are illegally, quote unquote, per him, occupied by Pakistan, and that it's run by terrorists, etc. And then the DGISPR, obviously we gave a very good response to that, that DGISPR said that he's behaving in an irresponsible manner as a military chief. So, sir, what are your comments on
As of a
these
rogue
remarks?
army, basically.
Yeah, of a rogue army.
And our army is an army of peace.
Look, General Bipin Rawat is in a habit of talking things which are much below his standard as a general officer, one, much below the acumen of Chief of Army Staff of one of the very big army, and he is. I think he is absolutely not visionary. He do not realize the ground facts. That Pakistan Army is the one whose victories are being written and taught in the modern academies
Asymmetrical
of the
warfare,
world.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Our victories are against war on
The,
terror.
the modern armies are coming to us to learn the lessons of the war which we have fought with the people in in FATA, that
Against the foreign
against
sponsored terrorist
yes,
organization, yes.
the people, those whom the most modern technology, most modernly equipped people in Afghanistan could not control.
Yeah.
Does he think it is possible for this army to be taken on like this? At this moment, the number of general officers which are commanding the divisions and the corps all have been, in the capacity of the unit commanders and the brigade commanders in the FATA. The world is recognizing that Pakistan Army is one of the most battle-hardened army in the world. And then over and above, thanks to God, we are a credible nuclear weapon state,
Right.
which
Unlike, sorry to interject, unlike Modi, the hardcore Hindu fundamentalists, Hindutva having, control of nuclear arms.
Yeah.
And that's the most worrisome as well,
Yes.
Bagir
Yeah.
Sahab. That's the worrisome
No.
facts for the world.
And now the world is trying to see them.
Yeah,
as
they're
an
trying to
I
see,
take
yes.
Dr. Saab's point ahead. Now, yesterday in India Today, there was a report of Ratna Award being given to Savarkar, who was named as a killer of Mahatma Gandhi.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are 39% of Indian BJP MLAs and MPAs, 36% of parliamentarians and state assemblies are facing criminal trials in 3,045 cases. Now, that is the hierarchy which is controlling the India at the moment. Now, as the Dr. Saab has said, now, do you think they will be able to decide correctly about the decision? Because decision to go for the war is rest with the politicians, not for the military leaders.
Right.
So that is very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, abrogation of Article 370 has also made other states of India apprehensive.
Absolutely.
That
Anything
what will
can
happen to
over
them?
there. Anything can happen over there. And I think Assam right now is very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable.
So now, as we come to the end of the program, I would like to ask you, Rana Athar Sahab, now the impending threat of a genocide that could be happening in Indian occupied Kashmir once the curfew is lifted, and we know that the people are going to come out and they're going to come to the streets and protest, and we know that the Indian army, as it's been known in the past, is going to come down very heavy-handed on them, and unfortunately we're all expecting it to be very, very violent. So what would you like to, what's your message right now to the world, that what do they need to do to prevent such a thing from happening?
I think if one thing we can do more is, which we are trying, to have a more active role of UNMOVIC and a fact-finding mission of the United Nations to be sent exactly the time when they will lift the curfew, in order for them to see, although the US senators were denied access or they visited Pakistan, AJK, I would say that there must be a fact-finding mission sent soon after the curfew is lifted, or now if they can get in there, or with the remote assessment. And secondly, I think Pakistan should not let up in their effort to expose India's brutality.
Absolutely.
And this Black Day today is a reminder as well, for
absolutely.
all of us, that it is our national duty, despite of all, irrespective of our political differences, that we should support our Kashmiri brothers sisters who have been suffering for the past 72 years.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your message, and thank you, Brigadier Shahid, Rana Athar Javed, and thank you, Dr. Musarat, for being with us today. My biggest concern at the moment is that the women and children and what they're suffering in Indian occupied Kashmir at the moment is that the women have already had their husbands taken away to jail. Their sons are being picked up in the middle of the night in night raids from the age of almost as young as 9. 13,000 children at this moment have been rounded up by the Indian military, and they are detained. They're in jails right now. What the world needs to think, and what we need to think as Pakistanis, and what the entire world community needs to think of, is that shouldn't these children have the right to grow up like our children, to become scientists and doctors and lawyers? Or do we want them to come out of these prisons and turn towards militancy so that their future is completely grey and blackened and they have no future? It's the responsibility of the world right now to think about those Kashmiri children and ensure that they come out safely, that they don't have to witness violence, they don't have to see their fathers and brothers killed or their mothers molested or worse, raped, and that they don't have to see themselves being picked up and taken to prison at a very young age. So we have to see the mental health and the safety and security of these children and their future. Thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye for now from Sharmeen Ali and PTV World.